My name is Julie Rocheleau, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you have a comment, criticism, or question, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are dedicated to the exhibitors who would have participated at the 2020 Montreal Comic Arts Festival. MCAF is a leading platform for the comic arts in Quebec and beyond to broaden public knowledge of and engagement with the comic arts, and to promote cultural exchanges and interactions between creators, readers, and the public at large. On this episode, I chat with Julie Rocheleau. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Julie is a Montreal designer. Formerly a freelance writer for animation studios, she reoriented herself in comics in the early 2010s, collaborating with talented writers. Among other things, she co-authored the trilogy The Wrath of Fantômas, La Petite Patrie, Betty Boob, and Crossing the Highway. These works have won numerous awards, as well as an Eisner Award nomination. She also illustrates novels, sometimes posters, does some zines, and is interested in flora, fauna, dance, running, the history of anything and everything, and a variety of other subjects, as a dilettante in any season. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Julie Rocheleau. So, Julie Rocheleau, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
It's my pleasure.
I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic books. I wonder if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
The first I can remember reading and not making up the dialogues was probably an Asterix in grade 1. I don't remember which one, but yeah, I was very into this Franco-Belgian comics, bande dessinée stuff.
That was very popular. Absolutely.
Yeah, and very, very expressive. Yeah, it's still very popular today, but it was in every home back then.
Absolutely. So that leads me to my next question. Who or what inspires you to create today?
That's the question I don't like all the time. There's just so many things I could list, and yeah, of course, other artists and people. And I guess I generally like spooky things, also nature, plants, animals. It's a big thing for me. It's very important. I'm a hiker. I love science. My friends are big. Gives me plenty of ideas, whether they know it or not. For artists, I guess, I have a little list, which is changes all the time. George Harriman from Crazy Cat fame is a big one. Taiyo Matsumoto, who did number 5, and Sonny. Claude Cloutier, who he does animation and comic book as well. He's a Québécois who used to do comics in the 80s and 90s. His style is very realistic. But the stories are absolutely goofy, and there's a big contrast between the drawing and the content itself, which is absolutely hilarious. I don't know, I could go on and on. Richard Thompson, Bill Watterson, the great Asaf Anuka, Emil Ferris. My favorite thing is Monsters. That was a big favorite of mine. Winsor McKay, etc. Kate Beaton,
Wow, that's very impressive, I must say. The reason I'm talking to you and others is under the context of the Montreal Comic Arts Festival that unfortunately didn't happen this year. So what I was hoping to ask you is, what were you planning to showcase at that particular event?
Well, of course, my latest book, Traverser l'autoroute, it came out in late February. It's written by Sophie Bienvenue, published at La Pastèque. But then I would have, Montreal is my hometown, so I can bring all my books. There's no problem with the weight or what I can bring or not. So I probably would have all of my other books, some zines. I wanted to have my zines translated in English for when I go to English speaking places like England and stuff. But of course, it didn't happen. It was one of the projects. I would have had some about Betty's Boob and the Wrath of Fantômas, which Wrath of Fantômas is kind of an older comic, but it was only recently translated in English. It was nominated for 2 Eisner Awards this year.
Well, congratulations on that.
We didn't win any, but it's still,
Absolutely tremendous to be nominated.
So it was because of that it came back on the shelf. So I would have definitely have some of that. Yeah, some prints. I love to do a lot of wordless zines as well because I work better, I guess, with images than words. And of course, then wherever you go in the world, you can have your little wordless zine, and it doesn't matter which language we speak there. So I had all kind of stuff planned, but some projects didn't even got to be made because I didn't have the deadline of the MCAF coming up. And it's a big part of doing things is to be a bit stressed out, I guess.
Right.
I work better under pressure. Yeah.
So these projects are still on the drawing board, or are they still working on them?
Yeah, but I also have actual books to make. Mm-hmm. Other than my own personal projects, so it's being delayed. So probably it's gonna change form, or as time passed quite fast. Sometimes I get distracted and decide to do another thing. I started this project. I might maybe finish it in 5 years, and it would have become a completely different other thing by then. But right now, I have some contracts, illustration for magazines, the things to occupy myself because there were no festivals anywhere. I guess I had more free time and I started taking a lot more work. So I have to do it now.
Sure, keep busy, absolutely. I was looking through your bio and noticed that you've worked in the animation field as well. So my question is, do you have a preference, animation or graphic novel illustration?
Well, I quit illustration to go into graphic novels. So I guess that answers your question. But but I'm not, I don't hate animation at all. I still love it. And maybe one day I will come back to it. What I used to do was storyboard and character design mostly. I also did some actual animation and prop design and other stuff. But storyboard was my main thing, I guess, which is not the same thing, but still pretty close to comic books. So, now instead of having to work with a lot of other people and different supervisors who would tell me to do different things at the same time and contradict themselves, but you have to make everybody happy, it kind of I was not in my happy place.
Right.
Maybe I did do some independent films, which was nice, but it's very exhausting and it takes so long. Guess I'm not patient enough. And comic books is just the right thing for me at this moment. Of course, it's a lot of work too, but you get things done more quickly and you can stay true to yourself because you don't have so many people to please. Between me and the writer and the publisher, and if we get along, everything's going to go smoothly. So, yeah.
Do you find more satisfaction in working in graphic novels?
Yes, at this point I do. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can express myself a lot more. I have more. There's more decision making. I'm more independent.
I wanted to take a step back and ask you about your creative process. I wonder if you could talk me through how you go from the initial concept to the finished page.
Well, if we're narrowing it down to comics, of course I do a lot of research, but I get lost in it. I try to educate myself. I try new things, storyboard-wise, but eventually I start digressing and I procrastinate. And at the end, it's the mix of all of that, and a good idea will pop up, and I will take it and run with it. It's not a very technical process, even though it gets precise more and more. I guess what I'm trying to say is I really just look at stuff and try stuff, and doing and thinking that at the same time is what makes me, brings me ideas.
That makes perfect sense. Now, I apologize, but are you a traditional or digital artist?
I'm more traditional, but all the colors are done digitally because it's more flexible. Of course, you can try all kind of things. You don't have to redo over all the time. I use also the computer, to reframe some drawings, to do a little touch up. But it all starts with an actual drawing on real paper. I work with ink and paint and quills. When I draw for myself, I also do direct colors with acrylic ink and color pencils. I love that. Of course, for a whole comic, it's way too much work. So I just scan the pages and color them in Photoshop, and then add the lettering also by hand, but on my Cintiq. So it's I guess 50-50.
Right. Do you find that you mentioned how you were working on some projects for others? Do you find that when it comes to deadlines, you find you lean more towards the digital side because time is of the essence, whereas working on your own projects, you prefer a more traditional style?
No, I don't think there's a preference because digital computer, it's a good tool. It makes you save time, but it can also make you lose time because you get to really have to be disciplined, because you can zoom infinitely into the drawing and start to fix every little detail, which doesn't matter. You can easily lose the vision of the big picture, which you don't when you have an actual piece of paper in front of you. So sometimes I have to go fast. I scan the drawing and then I start fixing every little thing. And I don't know what color I want. And I try 100 different combinations. So it was not faster. It really was not. So it's kind of a trap for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I really have to be careful. Sometimes you just don't know what you want, and you try stuff. Computer is not always a solution.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. I had not heard that before. So very interesting. You had mentioned some zines you had in the works and some other things. You mentioned your books that have been nominated for Eisners. I wonder if you have any other projects in the works that you can talk about that are about to come out.
There's one project I can talk about, although it's not about to come out. It will come out in late 2021 or 22. And it's about Nellie Bly and Elizabeth Bisland's world tour in the late 19th century. Nellie Bly was she was an incredible woman. She did a lot of great stuff in her life. This is only one of them. But she was a star reporter for the New York World back when women couldn't even vote in 1886 or so. And she was like 25, and she was a really big deal back then, and still is today. And her story is very fascinating. She was the first woman to do a trip around the world solo, and she was trying to beat Phileas Fogg. It's a fictional character from Jules Verne, around the world in 80 days.
Yes.
And she wanted to beat that fictional record, and she did. But she also had another woman doing the world tour in the other direction at the same time. Nellie was working for the New York World, and Elizabeth Bisland was working for the Cosmopolitan, and they were rivals. So this brings all kind of questions. Are they still doing this to prove that women are capable, or are they just competing with one another to know which one's going to be the star? So and of course there's a world tour at this time. There's a lot of stuff about colonialism and how Americans would see themselves. Of course, feminism back then. There's a lot of topics. It's going to be very, very dense. So that's a lot of research, and it's a big book, and probably already told you too much.
Well, it sounds
but
fascinating.
It's a true story, so it's not like I'm spoiling anything. It actually did happen. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds very fascinating. That's for sure. So I wanted to ask you, where can people find out more about this project and others that you're working on online?
Well, there's my website, JROCHELEAU.com. With my name, Julie Rocheleau, you can easily find me on Instagram, Facebook, Etsy, and pretty much everywhere. As far as I know, there's nobody else with my name who's into art or illustration or visual things at all. So I guess I'm pretty easy to find. So yeah, my name is Julie Rocheleau, ROCHELEAU, and yeah.
Thanks to Julie for the chat. You can discover more about Julie on Instagram at JulieRocheleau. and online at jrocheleau.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at TrueNorthComics. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2020.